There were lots of things that we were legally not allowed to do. So I began to get quite feisty and sort of say, I don't want to put up with this. I'm going to try and make things better. Soon learned that it was better to start my own company and do some positive discrimination where I employed primarily women.
Dame Stephanie Shirley. Her journey from founding all-woman software company to pioneering revolutionary work from home practices in the face of gender discrimination has not only written the rules of the game, but has paved the way for a generation of aspiring women's professionals. What led you to go to this direction?
Because I wanted something that was...
Welcome back, Alphas, to a new inspiring episode of the Alpha Talks podcast. Today, in the studio or online, I've got a very special alpha for you today. Today, we have the distinct honor of hosting a true pioneer and a trailblazer, Dame Stephanie Shirley, whose extraordinary life journey embodies the spirit of resilience and an unwavering determination. Join us as we delve into the remarkable life legacy of Dame Stephanie Shirley, learning from her remarkable journey, her unparalleled resilience, and her unshakable belief in the power of technology and philanthropy to create a better world. Please join me in giving a warm welcome to the remarkable Dame Stephanie Shirley. Dame, thank you very much for joining me today in the Alpha Talks podcast, and it's really an honor to have you on the show.
I like to feel I could be classed as an alpha.
I love that. And telling all the audience, we had a chat before going now in recording, and it was one of the best chats I had in the podcast. So I really appreciate your welcoming heart. And even the questions that you ask me comes, from a true heart, that you really care about the person in front of you. I appreciate that. Thank you again for being with us today.
It's my pleasure.
Dame, let's start with a very nice kind of question. Let's say that as soon as we publish the episode, people will look at the thumbnail that we will create, the title, and they will think it's very interesting. What can we promise them that they will gain today if they gave us their time? Anything that comes to your mind?
Learning to do the right thing.
Wow. I love that. It's a lot of people would say, knowledge, value, all these things. But getting or learning to do the right things, it's an extremely strong statement.
This is something that I thought you were doing with Alpha, sort of really thinking of values and ethics and the spirituality of life, not just the monetary aspects, the material aspects of entrepreneurism.
True, I love that. Dame, let's start a little bit with your early memories of your childhood back in Germany and before the outbreak of the World War. How was it? Can you just take us back to these moments?
Well, I was 5 when we left, and so I really only remember the childish things. Of Vienna, I can remember with affection the storks that nested in the rooftops of Vienna, and they were very messy nests they were too. I can, for a child, that's fascinating to see it. I remember being sent off on the train, largely because mainly parents, the children were not weeping. I think we'd been told we were going on holiday, but the parents were weeping and doing a sort of wailing sound, which I wasn't accustomed to, but was really coming from the heart. So I remember that. I remember the journey, sleeping on the floor on sheets of corrugated cardboard, eating, I presume, sandwiches. I can't really remember what. I remember a little boy that kept being sick the whole of the 2.5-day journey, kept being sick. And I even think I can remember his name, Peter.
Wow.
Why I should remember that. I can remember losing my doll, which is much more important to me than losing my home. It is, I have childish memories, and I had a good childhood, really.
Yeah. By having this kind of experience as a refugee, child refugee, how did this shape, I would say, your worldview and your sense of resilience? How can you tell us this?
It made the whole of my life. It was such an impactful thing. It made, you've mentioned resilience, but I know that having coped with that, no change can really throw me anymore. So having dealt with that change, I've learned to love change. I actually pride myself on being able to cope with change. And that's a good quality, I think, to have for an entrepreneur.
True.
The other thing that it did for me was to, when I arrived in England, I had a wonderful welcome from everybody, but there were some people and the neighbors of my foster parents who kept saying to me, and they repeated it in my memory, um, aren't you lucky to be saved? Aren't you lucky to be saved?
Wow.
And that had a deep impression on me and made me needing to justify my survival. And that's not a healthy atmosphere to grow up in a 6-year-old. But I do feel that I've been lucky, and therefore I need to feel that my life was worth saving.
True.
And that has driven my life. I don't want to exaggerate, but it is still as active for me today as it was 80 years ago.
A quick note, I find this incredibly intriguing. On the back end of our YouTube channel, it says around 75% of you who watch this channel frequently over the lifetime of this channel haven't yet hit the subscribe button. I just wanted to ask you for a favor. It helps this channel so much if you choose to just subscribe. It helps us invite guests that give you great value, it helps us scale the production, and as well makes this show bigger and bigger for you. And if you enjoyed the previous episodes and you're currently enjoying this episode, could you please hit the subscribe button? I love your support. It's incredible to see all your comments and engagement, and we are just starting. Thank you so much, and I will repay this gesture by making sure that everything we do on this show makes it bigger, and better. I'm committed to do this promise. Do we have a deal? Thank you so much for subscribing. It means the world to me.
When you arrived to England, of course, you faced a lot of challenges, of course. What was the biggest one that you remember?
Well, language, obviously,
Yeah.
because we arrived not speaking any English. My father had taught us a few bizarre phrases so that I could say things like slow combustion stove
Wow.
and fine screen Viper. But I didn't know how to ask, forgive me,
Yeah.
how to go to the toilet,
Wow.
which is much more important for a 5-year-old. So the language was a difficulty, and people also got muddled up between German and Nazis. We were at war with the Nazis, but the just being German shouldn't have been such a problem for me, but it was. I learned the language pretty quickly. I arrived in July. By September, my English was good enough to go to school.
No way, 2 months.
And I was
2 months.
Well, I was only
Yeah.
5.
Yeah.
And I was in a family that didn't speak German, so it was immediately
True.
sort of immersed in English. I find English a beautiful language. It's very rich. I do a lot of public speaking, and I really enjoy playing with language there. And it is important to me, I think. But looking at world events, you think, wouldn't it be better if we all spoke the same language and started off on the same footing?
True. Your early separation from your family, did it help, I would say, did it build in you the sense that you want to create a community around you? And that's what you did with your company.
I don't know whether it was building a community around me.
Yeah.
I was very conscious that I hadn't got any extended family. There was nobody that knew me, my parents, and so to perhaps in a way one was compensating for that.
Yeah.
I don't think so. I think I fell into business for quite different reasons. I was sick and tired of being treated like a second-class citizen. I was sick and tired of being patronized. I'd been patronized as a Jew and worse, but I wasn't going to be patronized as a woman. And women at that time were debarred from most financial transactions.
True.
So that we couldn't open a bank account I couldn't open my company's bank account without my husband's authorization. I couldn't work on the stock exchange. Women couldn't drive a bus, fly an airplane. There were lots of things that we were legally not allowed to do. So women, second-class citizens, and I began to get quite feisty and sort of say, I don't want to put up with this. I'm going to try and make things better.
Wow.
And soon learned that it was better to start my own company and do some positive discrimination where I employed primarily women and women with children
True.
working from their own homes. Now, this was in 1962.
You know, I love
So
sorry to interrupt you, but what I love, you chose something that at that time was extremely impossible to do. And you went hands on and you just broke the norm. That's something remarkable.
I mean, I've been described as disruptive.
Yeah.
And when they first used that term, I thought they were being rude. But I realized that, yes, if you're going to do anything as an entrepreneur, you do need to be disruptive. You do need to think big. You do need to think long term. And I did.
True.
But it was a very slow burn. It really was.
Very inspiring. One question here. What inspired you to go towards technology and computing world? That's one thing. And the second is it's a male dominated by nature. Even now, you attacked the one thing that it's a male dominated thing, and it's technology at that time.
In the technology at the moment, something between 20 and 30% of the workforce is female.
Yeah.
And that's after many, many years. So it was revolutionary. What was your question? I forgot.
What made you to go towards technology and computing? What was the inspiration behind?
Well, I've been lucky. At any time, I've known what I wanted to do. I've known who I wanted to become. And I wanted to become the world's greatest mathematician.
Wow.
Solve something called Fermat's last theorem. This was at about the age of 11. By the time I was 18, I began to realize that I hadn't got it in me to contribute to mathematics in that way. But the computer industry came along, and you needed mathematics for computing in the early days. And so I was able to switch direction pretty well overnight or over month, and have never looked back.
Wow.
Because with a new field like computing, I was able to make a contribution, and that's what entrepreneurs, we're trying to make the world a better place. We want to make some contribution and something that we can measure and see and say, yes, I was part of making that happen.
True. The question here, what were the challenges in that early times? And how did you overcome? Because we want to talk about Steve, the name that you used to move things.
Well, I was very innocent as regards marketing. And so one of the things I did was very simple. I looked in the newspapers for advertisements for programmers, and then wrote to people sort of saying, I'm not applying for a job, but I can get programming work done for you on a consultancy basis. And I was launching these letters out, probably about 10 a week. And I thought they were professional letters and they were professionally presented, but they got absolutely no response whatsoever.
Zero response.
And so my late husband suggested that I use the family nickname of Steve instead of Stephanie. So I became Steve Shirley. And surprise, surprise, I began to get some responses. People replied to my letters. We set up some meetings, and it was a bit of a shock when I walked through the door that Steve was a woman, but I'd got through the door, and that's the important thing. I had a good story to tell.
Exactly.
And I began to get some work.
Wow.
So it was a question of dissembling and pretending to be a man, taking advantage of the fact that we were not visual at those days.
Kind of a marketing tactic that opened doors.
A marketing tactic. It was also, I think it's important in business to be memorable and to distinguish yourself from the competition.
I love that. Exactly.
So I was remembered for that. Sometimes it was facetious, Steve and her girls, but other times it was, we were just remembered. Oh yes, I've heard of that company. And that's a very valuable thing for an organization to have in the early days.
True.
Because we started very, very small with £6 capital,
Wow.
worth about £100 in today's terms.
Wow.
And it was years before we became anything like professional. One of the things that made us more professional was I wanted to take out insurance for professional indemnity because we were doing a project that sort of had some national significance. And the quotation was so expensive that I thought, I can't afford that. How can I get that protection? Oh, I'll become a limited liability company, because up to that time I hadn't been. So I was always finding ways to do things that were different and achieved what it was that I was trying to get. I settled into business very, very well because I loved it, and I remember the early days in particular with great affection.
I love that. You said something very interesting, because these days or currently entrepreneurs look for businesses that will turn profitable very quick due to the social media, due to the comparison and. Can you tell us how long did it take you to say that now I have a business, now the business makes money? Because the perception these days is absolutely, sometimes it's a pity to see people thinking that you will go into business, you will turn it around in 1 year and be successful businessman or a woman.
No, I was talking with timescales. I was thinking long term. I was thinking long term of building up an organization, not as we've said before, not as family, but I was just ambitious for me, ambitious for women generally. And I knew if we succeeded, it would really do something for women. And if we failed, it would be disastrous for women, because people would say, oh, yes, we tried a company of women and it was a disaster.
So it was an ambition and a goal to you that you never lose.
I don't think so. I always want continuous improvement. It took about 5 years before I was conscious. I can remember saying at one Christmas lunch with family friends, oh, the company's, it's flying now, I said.
5 years.
And it was. And that was December. By January, I'd had some disaster that really made me reconsider that. And it's always, it's a very tentative progress with a business. You can lose clients, you can lose staff, key staff, you can lose confidence, you can lose your health, and all the time you've got the responsibility of driving this disparate group of people, some of whom you can't even see because we were working by telephone and post.
True. But Dame, what made you focus on starting up a business that is only run by women? Even in that time, it was very hard, but like, why it was this, I would say, your way to go? I want to create a business that's only with women.
Because I wanted something that I was sick and tired of being patronized, and I wanted a group in which I could thrive, in which other women could thrive. And I guess that the sort of things I was looking for, family friendly, great flexibility, these were things that other women would be driven by and find attractive.
I love that. Then if we move to your philanthropic efforts, what led you to go to this direction?
Well, I hope I've always been a sort of giving person, giving of my time, giving of my skills. The world is a very unfair place, and charities and philanthropies is a way of making a little bit of difference by helping, I was going to say the poor, but I don't really mean the poor.
Yeah.
The poor in spirit.
The people who need.
The needy.
Yeah, the needy.
Now, some businesses think of the needy as just being a complete aggravation that gets in the way of business and making profits. But I was not so profit-oriented. I was much more lifestyle-oriented. I wanted a lifestyle for me and for other women that was fitted in with women's traditional desires.
After how many years you sold out your company? It took you how long?
Sold out after about 40 years.
40 years, wow. For you as Dame, did you feel that it's time to sell it out? Or like, sometimes as business owners, we think that this is always our baby. Why it made you to decide to sell the business that you created and you made a huge impact?
Well, I really would have always wanted a different long-term solution, but I failed to achieve it. What I wanted to do is I started giving my shares in the company to the staff, and aimed really for some co-ownership model of business that was not only family friendly, but was more people friendly generally and less short-term profit oriented. That made quite a difference in that I approached tasks and situations in a different way. I wasn't just looking for the bottom line, but also for the social impact. And to a certain extent, there's a third bottom line, the environmental impact of what one does. And we think human being, if we're to keep the humans in the heart of technology, we have to always remember the basic bottom line, the finances.
Absolutely.
The social bottom line, what difference does this make in the world? And finally, the environmental issues.
Absolutely.
And there may be others.
Absolutely.
So, I'm not heavily driven by money. Money to me is a necessary, almost evil, but it's necessary. I respect money. I like the choice and lifestyle that money has provided for me. I wouldn't like to be poor again, and I have been poor. But money is not everything as far as I'm concerned.
True. If we're talking about Shirley's Foundation, what will be your most memorable success story from the project that was supported by Shirley's Foundation? And close to your heart, close to your heart.
Yeah, well, the one close to my heart is definitely a school that I set up for children with autism, where the pupils are aged 5 to 25, many without speech, many of them with epilepsy, many of them with complex needs. And that has the most wonderful atmosphere of love when you go there. I was there last Wednesday. Wow. I go 2 or 3 times a year, that's all, because it's now established. My aim in philanthropy is always to set things up and get them to a sustainable level where they will run themselves, where they will do their own fundraising, where they will do their own management. And the first charity took me 17 years to get sustainable.
Wow, 17 years.
17 years. Wow. The second one, Prior's Court, took me 5 years. 5 years where that was the main thing in my life. At the end of the 5 years, it was freestanding, and I could walk away from it.
Wow.
And the last charity, which is a medical research charity, that only took me 2 years, but it was altogether on a different scale. Prior's Court gives me enormous pleasure in that the children, you can see them between visits, you can see them grow and develop, you can see them calm down, you can see them start to smile, occasionally start to speak, but speech doesn't often come late.
True.
They are very vulnerable pupils, and they bring out the best in everybody who works there.
That's your absolute fulfillment. I feel it. That's how you fulfill yourself. That's really how I feel it. Am I correct?
Yes, of course. And it gives me, when I come back from Prior's Court, family always sort of say, you're always full of smiles. And I'm very happy with that.
I love that. Dame, if I ask you what lessons that you've learned from your experience in business that you wish that you have known before you started, what would be that?
I think the cash flow point was one that was a very basic one that would have saved me years of problems.
True.
I was going to say the importance of people management. I started off a software house because I like software. I wanted to work in software. I wanted to write software. But very quickly, I found that I delegated the software and was left with the administration, the human resources, the cash flow, all the things that make a business work. And I found that very unattractive and unappealing. And I never got back to doing technical work. I have to get my satisfaction from making new things happen in a different way.
I love that. And if we talk about what was your values and principles at that time, did it change over time? The empire that you've built from a business perspective, from a philanthropy perspective, your values and principles, did it change?
Modified, I would say, rather than changed. It became more professional. We talked about, rather than just talking, we're working in teams. Women are traditionally good at working in teams.
True.
And in multitasking.
Our values modify and get adapted, but never change. That's what I believe.
I mean, there's something that is a kernel in me that is not going to change. And I don't imagine any temptation or happening would make me behave in a different way. But one does change and modify. What I was going to say was that I learned instead of talking about teams, talking about a collegiate culture. When co-ownership came in and the company started to be partly owned by its staff, it had an enormous electrifying impact on staff morale. They suddenly worked as they'd never worked before, more quickly, more accurately, more strategically. It was quite an exciting time.
I love that. Dame, now technology and gender changed over time. Women in technology, we just saw or we spoke about it, that now women became, I would say, part of technology, still male dominant, but there is an absolute change. Do you see that these days?
Yes, I noticed though that in artificial intelligence, for example, there haven't been many women involved in the design of systems. And so they're repeating some of the mistakes that are just gender mistakes, and that's quite disappointing. We need to get as many people involved, deeply involved in the design of technical systems. Otherwise, we lose the humanity that is inside that technical system.
True. What was the most, I would say, fulfilling aspect of your company or your business that was really close to you? The most fulfilling. And I do understand it's not a monetary thing for you, so what was it?
I think it was just protecting women's position in society, that over the years, I realized I had made a difference in bringing women to the fore, in having women's work acknowledged and accepted, and basic things like equal pay, career prospects, the top positions being open to women. These are things that have happened in my lifetime, and I know I have been part of it. And that makes me very proud, but also very content with my impact.
I love that. If I talk about work-life balance, the thing that a lot of people talk about, what do you think work-life balance? Does it exist, or it's kind of hard for entrepreneurs?
But at the moment, the world is moving towards a lot of home working, which I've always done. And I find that home life balance is easier to achieve at home. Other people have found differently. They have found that work performance goes down, that team working goes down. And so the work-life balance varies from industry to industry, but has the concept of pure respect for the individual. They're not just there for what they produce. They're there as an individual. They have to be looked after. They have to be supported. They have to be led. But it is the importance of the individual human and their brain.
Wow. Because I believe as an entrepreneur, it's very hard when you're setting up something or setting up a business. The concept of work-life balance, it doesn't exist. You work
It doesn't exist for me.
Absolutely.
It doesn't exist for me.
Yeah.
It never has. I've never had that balance. It's been all work.
True.
But I do realize that it's not a healthy way to be. And we spoke earlier before we started about your sporting activities. I mean, I'm a sedentary person. I sit at a desk, but I still have learned to look after myself, mind, body, and spirit.
True.
So I swim a quarter of a mile twice a week. I try to eat sensibly. This is looking after myself. And I used not to. It used to be everything was thrown into the business. And then I had a breakdown and I learned, what must I do? And that is to look after myself.
True. It's most important. That's why even when we're extremely busy, we try to find time to take care of our health, because without it, nothing works. If you would give an advice for young entrepreneurs that they really want to make an impact in the world or the community where they live in, what will be your top advice to them?
To aim to be disruptive, to think big, which probably means thinking international right from the beginning. Not that you work internationally, but you're thinking, how will this extend later on internationally? And to think in terms of doing the right thing politically, economically, personally, rather than just doing things right. I mean, I started off, I'm very Germanic in my style, in that I like things to be efficient. I really like things to be efficient. Then you move away from that. Efficiency is not what you're after. It's effectiveness. Well, what effect are you having on the world?
True.
And I've achieved that through my business, and I'm now a very happy person.
I love that. If I ask you a question, what does success means to you? Because success is different for everyone, defines success in a different way. And I believe it changes over time as well. What's success for you?
I think success for me now is choice. That I have choice as to how I spend my time, what I do with my money, and I've given most of it away.
Yeah.
I find that very satisfying. So there are some, to be wealthy is quite a heavyweight responsibility. And relationships have changed very much when it's known that you have money. And that's not a pleasant thing to learn to deal with. But success is when you make real friends, when you have real, not material things.
Not material connections.
Friendships. I mean, I'm a collector of art, and that gives me an enormous pleasure. And yes, you could only do it if you're successful, because it is quite expensive. I don't work in art at all, but I think I know what makes good art. So I buy very selectively, and I love it. I love it, and that to me is success.
If I ask you, what are your hobbies? What's your hobbies? I could understand it's swimming, art. Am I correct? Or
yeah, well, I don't think I do much else. What else do I do? I work.
Yeah.
I enjoy my work. It's easy these days. I don't have to do it. It's not just something I do when I'd rather be doing something else. It's what I actually want to do. And work, it means researching for speeches that I'm going to give. I do quite a lot of writing. And I get asked to visit places and sort of unveil a statue. It's a wonderful opportunity to really think about that particular statue and what it means in society. It's a real privilege to be invited to be part of the artist's work by unveiling it to the public.
Wow, wow. Can I ask you this question? What motivates you to keep going? What inspires you to keep going?
What else would I do?
No, tell me, like, it's like sometimes people think like, okay, we will work till the age of 40, 50 and we retire. What motivates you to keep going, keep going, keep going? You 100% want to leave a legacy. You want to leave an impact, a big impact on the world. Is that the thing that motivates you?
I used to be asked about legacy and would sort of say, I'm not interested. I haven't had buildings named after me or anything like that. But it is an age consideration. As I've aged, I have become interested in legacy. Is this something that will endure after my death? And one of the universities in Britain has set up an archive for philanthropists, and all my details, all my philanthropic work is archived there in the university. And I feel, that's very nice. In 100 years' time, somebody will be reading about what I've done, and that makes me very happy.
Wow. What would be, I would say, as businesswoman, a successful businesswoman, had an amazing journey. What are your goals? And I believe you have goals. What are your goals right now?
Well, they vary with time, of course. Yeah. I think my goal now is to go on working at a level that is healthy for me, and to continue to get great joy from it. There's a number of people who are watching what I do, and I have gradually tailed off my work as the years go by. But I'm now 90 years old. I still work 5 days a week, and I still enjoy it. I want to go on doing it.
I love that. You know, Dame, like I met a couple of entrepreneurs, I would say, which tells me, Saif, I only work 2 days a week. For me, myself, I can't believe that. I can't. How come? Literally, I work 6 to 7 days a week. That's the part of being an entrepreneur. That's part of the not correct work-life balance, I would say. But that's the journey. So you still work 5 days a week.
At least.
Yeah, I love that. Dame, what's the message you want to leave our audience with today? What kind of message you want to leave the audience with today?
I think I've mentioned it before, really. It's this knowing that it's not the legislation that allows you to do something that's right, but there are certain things that are right and proper, that grow you as an individual, that develop the world around you, that is a positive alpha thing to do, rather than take. The world at the moment is very selfish. I'm not talking politics, I'm talking about the general culture. People are much more selfish, I think, than they used to be. And that is partly the result of wealth. I don't think wealth is an easy thing to deal with. So I hope that I can keep going and maintain that ethical stance.
I love that. Dame, the last question. How do you define alpha? What's alpha for you?
Being the very best that you can, putting all the effort that's required into each task. So one wonderful thing I have, if I am an alpha, is I never have really regrets, because I know each thing that I've done the best of my ability. I've trained myself as best I can. I've spent the time on it. I've checked it. And so it's as good as I can do. I can't do better than my best. And that it is something that I think I live by, really. I want to do my best all the time.
I love that. Dame, thank you very much for being with us today. It's really an honor, and you're an inspiration. Thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed the show.
I did indeed.
Thank you very much. And I hope we do one more episodes with you again. Thank you very much.
That wraps another inspiring episode of today's show. I hope that this episode has ignited your inner alpha. Remember, alphas aren't born, they're made. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to subscribe to the Alpha Talks on your favorite podcast platform. Also connect with us on social media at Saif Al Hakim. Share your thoughts, insight, and stories of personal and business growth with us. Let's create a movement of alphas supporting one another. The world needs more alphas like you exactly. Until next time, stay bold, stay driven, and stay alpha.